Hello everyone and welcome back to Warpbane Tactics. In this video I'm going to be doing a recap of my match GT where I took Grey Knights and managed to finish third overall. I went 4 wins and 1 loss, and honestly I was really happy with how the army performed across the weekend. Now, as always, I'm not here to pretend I played everything perfectly, because I definitely didn't. There were mistakes, there were moments where the dice helped, and there were moments where the dice absolutely packed their bags and left the building. But that's tournament 40k. And of course, because we are Grey Knights, we had one very clear job for the weekend, and that's to purge demons. Simple, straightforward, literally written in the job description. So naturally, the only game I lost all weekend was in demons. Fantastic work for the Emperor's finest there. So in this video, I'm going to go through the list I took, each of the matchups, the scores, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what I learned from the event. And as always, if you like Grey Knights content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel, because it really does help Warpbane Tactics keep growing. So this was the list I took. I was running Warpbane Task Force, and the list was built around a mix of mobility, pressure, purifier damage, and Dread Knight threat projection. For characters, I had Castle and Crow, 2 Brotherhood Librarians, and 2 Grandmasters in Nemesis Dread Knight. Then for the Walkers, I had 2 normal Nemesis Dread Knights. For infantry, I had 1 5-man strike squad, 2 5-man interceptor squads, and 1 10-man purify squad, and 2 5-man purify squads. The idea behind the list was quite simple. The Purifiers and Crow gave me a strong anti-infantry output, the Librarians bring extra psychic shooting and flexible damage, and then the Dread Knights give me the speed, threat range and damage into toughest targets. The Interceptors are there for mission play and mobility, and the Strike Squad gives me that sticky objective utility, which is still really important. You don't have loads of bodies, so you can't just throw things away for free. Every unit has to do a job, which is slightly stressful, because if one unit goes, you do start looking around the table like, well, that was 20% of my army gone then. But what you do have is strong movement, good pressure, and the ability to punish mistakes. Round 1 was into Orks, running the Dread Mob detachment. This is a proper Ork Walker list with a lot of big chunky units that you can't just ignore. The list had 2 big mechs with shock attack guns, 2 mechs, 3 units of 6 kilocans, a Death Dread, a battle wagon, a truck, 2 mech guns, a Morkanaut, and 3 units of boys. So straight away there were a lot of targets that needed dealing with. The kilocans are annoying, the Morkanaut is a big problem if you let it dictate the board, and the mech support makes the shooting more reliable than you might expect. And nothing says welcome to the GT quite like staring across the table at what looks like a scrapyard that has developed anger issues. Into this, I knew I needed to play the mission properly and not just get dragged into trying to kill everything. Because against Orks, especially with that many walkers, you can start thinking, I'll just remove the threats, and then suddenly there are about 14 metal boxes waddling up the table at you. So the plan was to use movement, pick the right targets, and score consistently. This game ended 91 to 35 for the Grey Knights. I went first, and the mission was Terraform. The big thing here was scoring consistency. I managed to get 48 out of 50 on my primary, which is huge, and then 33 out of 40 on secondary. Plus the 10 for battle ready. The Orks only managed 15 primary and 10 secondary, so once I got ahead on the mission, it became very difficult for them to claw back in. I think this is one of those games where the Grey Knights movement really mattered. Being able to reposition, pick angles, and decide where the fight happens is massive. The Orcs list had a lot of threat, but if you can control where and when those threats actually connect, you can take a lot of the sting out of it. The big takeaway from this game was the Warpbane Task Force felt really comfortable when it could dictate tempo. I didn't need to table the opponent, I just needed to keep scoring, remove the pieces that mattered, and not give away too much in return. So game 1 was a strong start. The Grey Knights successfully purged the Orks, which is not technically our main job, but we will take that one. Round 2 was into Imperial Knights, running Custoris Companions. This was a very different type of matchup. The list had 2 Knight Lancers, 2 Crusaders, and 3 Armiger Warglaives. So compared to the Orcs, there were fewer models on the table, but every model was a serious threat. The Lancers can put huge pressure on you with their speed and melee threat. The Crusaders bring a lot of shooting, and the Warglaives are really annoying because they are fast, they hit hard, and they can trade very well. This is the kind of game where every mistake matters. Against Knights, you can't just casually leave something exposed because it probably will disappear. Grey Knights are tough, but they're not stand in front of a giant robot and hope for the best tough. At the same time, you also can't be too passive, because if you let Knights walk onto the board and score freely, you're going to lose on points. So the plan here was to play cagey, take the scoring where I could, and try to remove or control key threats rather than overcommitting too early. This was a much closer game, ending 61 to 52 for the Grey Knights. The mission was hidden supplies, and again I went first. This was definitely not a big runaway game like round one. I only scored 20 to 50 on the primary, while the Knights scored 30 to 50, so they actually beat me on primary. The difference was the secondary scoring. I managed 31 out of 40 in the secondary, while the Knights only managed 12 out of 40. That was basically the game. This is where Grey Knights can still be really strong, because even when you are under pressure and struggling to dominate primary, you can still use movement, redeploying, and small units to keep scoring points. I think this game showed the value of not panicking into Knights. It's very easy to feel like you need to kill everything immediately because every model is a massive threat, but sometimes you just have to accept that you're not going to win every primary exchange. Instead, you need to ask where I can score, what can I deny, what can I keep alive for one more turn. And that was enough to pull this one through. So round two was a close one, but still a 61 to 52 victory. Round three was into Space Marines, Salamanders with the Forge Father Seekers. This list had Adrax, Captain, Lieutenant, Tech Marine, Vulcan. For the vehicles, there was a Land Raider and a Repulsor Executioner. Then for infantry, there were Intercessors, Jump Pack Assault Intercessors, Blade Guard Veterans, Company Heroes, Hellblasters, and two big units of Infernus Marines. So this list had a lot of scary short-range damage. The Redeemer is always a problem. Infernus Marines can pick up infantry very quickly. Hellblasters are dangerous, and Vulcan plus Salamander style buffs can make the flame weapons really nasty. Basically, it was a list that wanted to give my Grey Knights a nice warm hug. Unfortunately, that hug was made entirely of flames. So into this, I knew I had to respect the threat ranges. If you just walk into the middle of and let the flamers touch you, your Grey Knight will have a very bad day, and Crow will be looking around wondering where all his purifiers went. The key was to use mobility, force awkward trades, and make sure I was the one choosing when the important unit got exposed. This game ended 93 to 36 for the Grey Knights. The mission was Purge the 4, and I managed to score full 50 out of 50 on primary, which is massive. I also scored 33 out of 40 on secondary, which gave me a really strong final score. Salamanders only scored 20 on primary and 6 on the secondary. So once the game started to swing, it became very hard for them to catch up. I think this was probably one of the cleanest games of the event for me. The Grey Knights felt like they were doing exactly what they were meant to do, moving around the board, picking off key units, scoring consistently, and not giving the opponent easy opportunities to hit back. Against an army like Salamanders, you have to respect the damage, but you also can't let that fear stop you from playing the mission. So the big lesson here was control aggression. Don't throw units away, but don't hide so much that you can't stop scoring. So round three, another big win, 93-36. The Purifiers clearly understood the assignment here. They were less clear on that later, but for this game, no complaints. Round 4 was into Deathwatch using the Warpbane Task Force. This was a very infantry heavy list with a lot of units on the table. The characters were a chaplain, a captain, a lieutenant, a Kaldis assassin as an allied unit. Then the infantry was absolutely stacked. There were assault intercessors, multiple Deathwatch veteran units, Desmos kill teams, intercessors, eradicators, an Indomitor kill team, and Sternguard veterans. So there was a lot of units to chew through. Into this kind of list, target priority really matters. There are a lot of units, and if you waste time killing the wrong things, the opponent can just keep scoring and trading. At the same time, Grey Knights do have good tools here. Purifiers are excellent into infantry. Crow helps push that damage up, and the army's ability lets you choose where you fight. The concern was the volume of units and the scoring potential. Deathwatch had enough bodies to spread out screen and tried to make the board awkward. This game ended 95 to 40 for the Grey Knights. The mission was Linchpin, and this was another very strong scoring round. Deathwatch went first, but I managed to score the full 50 out of 50 on primary, plus 35 out of 40 on secondary. This is about as strong as you can ask for in a tournament game. Deathwatch scored 9 on primary and 21 on secondary. So they did get some secondary scoring going, but they were massively held back on primary. For me, this game really showed how strong Grey Knights can be when they're allowed to control the scoring game. The army doesn't always win by just smashing everything off the board. A lot of the time, it wins by being annoying, being mobile, and consistently forcing your opponent to deal with problems in different places. Basically, teleporting around the board causes stress, which, to be honest, is exactly why we all play Grey Knights. And when the Purifiers get good targets, they can absolutely put in the work. So for round 4, another big win, 95 to 40, and at this point the event was going really well. But naturally, this meant the final round had to humble me slightly. Final round was into Chaos Daemons, and this was a very different beast, and I mean that literally because the list was basically a collection of Nightmare Fuel. It had Bellicor, Shalaxi, Scarbrand, a Bloodthirster, a Great Unclean One, a Lord of Change, and a unit of Fleshhounds, so no pressure then. This is the kind of list where every single big model is a problem. Shalaxi is terrifying, Scarbrand can absolutely delete things, Bellicor brings a lot of utility and pressure, the Great Unclean One is incredibly annoying to shift, and the Lord of Change adds another layer of durability and threat. Now, as a Grey Knight player, this should have been the moment. This should have been the army looking across the table and going, right lads, this is what we trained for. This is our purpose, this is our whole thing. We are not here to do admin. We are not here to build bridges. We are not here for polite team building exercise. We have one job: purge the demons. Unfortunately, my Grey Knights must have skipped that section of the codex because, spoiler alert, this was the only game I lost all weekend. Into this, I knew I had to be very careful. You can't just send units in and hope for the best, because if you bounce, you probably lose that unit. But you can also can't let demons walk onto objectives uncontested, because they will score and force you into bad positions. So the plan was to play the mission, pick my moments, and avoid giving the big threats easy trades. This was the only loss of the event, ending 64 to 85. The mission was taken hold and the demons went first. The big difference here was primary scoring. Demons scored 45 out of 50 in primary, while I scored 30 out of 50. They also scored 30 out of 40 on secondary, while I scored 24 out of 40. So I didn't completely collapse, and 64 points is still a respectable score, but the demons were just more consistent across the game. The demons controlled primary very well. They put pressure in all the right places, and I just couldn't shift enough at the right time. This was one of those matchups where I felt the pressure from the big threats all game. The demon list could bully primary, force awkward trades, and make it really difficult to remove enough at the right time. Looking back, this is probably the game where I'd want to spend the most time thinking about positioning and when to commit. Sometimes with Grey Knights, the temptation is to try and make a big play, but into a list like this, if the big play doesn't fully work, you can lose momentum very quickly. So yes, the only loss of the weekend was into Demons. The Lord's Batman will be filling a formal complaint, but all jokes aside, it was a good game and there was a lot to learn from it. And honestly, going into that final round with the Grey Knights and still being in a strong position overall, I'll absolutely take that. So that was the GT recap. Overall, I finished 4-1, came third, and I was happy with how the Grey Knights performed. There were some massive positives from the weekend. The army scored well, the mobility felt strong, the Dread Knights gave me real threat projection, and the Purifiers did exactly what you want Purifiers to do, which is mostly remove infantry and make people regret standing anywhere near them. Grey Knights are not always easy to play, and you definitely feel it when you make mistakes, but when you use the movement properly and focus on the mission, they can absolutely compete. The loss into the demons gave me plenty to think about. Obviously, it is deeply funny that the one army Grey Knights are supposed to be built to destroy with the army that beat me. Still, I came away really happy with the list, really happy with the result, and with plenty to work on going forward. Hopefully this was interesting, and hopefully it gives other Grey Knight players a bit of confidence as well. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe. If it really helps the channel grow, and there'll definitely be more Grey Knight content, list breakdowns, battle reports, and tournament recaps coming soon. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.